Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. All right, we go to agenda item 3, which is public comments. Eric, did we receive any emails or any requests to speak on, I presume, non-agenda items?
Chair Sandoval, we have not received any public comments.
Okay, great. All right, so then we can go ahead and move on to agenda item 4, which is chairman remarks. And I presume everybody can hear me okay. All righty. I just have one thing to report. Just want to share that the committee that was established last month to examine the ACE projects has scheduled its first meeting for April 14th. You may recall that includes member Moss, member Peralta, member Mahmood, and member Hepburn. If I recall correctly, I think there was an error in the minutes, meeting minutes, but that was since taken care of. And so we look forward to this working group reporting back when it concludes this very important task. So I just want to thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Do we have any member comments? Moving on to agenda item 5. Any of you want to share anything? And Eric, you could always help me if you see any hands up.
Certainly,
I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, all right, we can go ahead and move on to item 7, which is, item 6, which is the Director of Capital Projects Monthly Report. Eric, turn it over to you.
Great, thank you very much, Chair. Respectfully, I'm presenting the following updates on our programs and our projects. Staff is currently reviewing cost proposals from 2 best qualified proposers, one for the public outreach activities, and another one is to conduct technical analyses for the San Gabriel Valley transit study. We expect to bring forth a recommendation for contract award to the governing board in its April or May meeting. Next, staff is releasing a request for proposals for the construction management services, the construction of the State Route 5760 freeway improvements. In a few days, we plan to release an invitation for bids for the construction of the Diamond Bar Golf Course mitigation improvements as part of the State Route 5760 project. Now I'm going to ask my colleague Paul Hubler, Director of Government and Community Relations, to provide additional updates on the federal grant opportunities for this project. Paul? Oh, actually, hold on just a second. I'm sorry, Paul had just called, and I'm going to skip this part, and maybe Paul will call it. Well, there's Paul. Paul, would you be able to provide an update on the federal grant of 5760 project?
Yeah, I apologize for that. I was initially not admitted as a participant, but just as I guess, a spectator. So the LA Metro staff was preparing and submitted a grant application for the SR 5760 project. Late last week, the deadline I think was Friday. I imagine they submitted it well in advance just to avoid any headaches. COG staff has been involved in securing letters of support for the grant application. We're happy we had good success despite the short turnaround to do that. So the application requests $30 million in federal infra program funds. The infra program is intended for freight and freight highway projects. And so we think, as in the years past, frankly, the SR 5760 is the perfect project for this type of a program, given that it's among the top 10. Now it's at 11, but it's one of the top truck choke points in the entire nation. And it's the #2 truck accident involved location in Southern California. So like I said, the grant application was submitted. There's still time, and we are continuing to collect letters of support from our members of Congress. The House letter of support is being led by Congresswoman Napolitano's office. in conjunction with Congresswoman Young Kim, and we expect to secure the signatures of the entire San Gabriel Valley House delegation in support of this application. And then the two cities, Diamond Bar and Industry, have a lobbyist under contract, Kevin Jones, and he is also working on securing letters of support from our two U.S. senators. So with that, the applications will be taken in, and we expect to hear within several months, certainly prior to the summer, the results of this the application, and hopefully we have good news. This is not the first round that this project has been submitted, but it is, we feel perhaps with the new administration that we may have a good chance for a funding award for the project. With that, I'd be happy to take questions, or I can also offer a brief update on the earmark request. Congress this year, after a hiatus of about 10 years, Congress reinstated the process of earmarking the annual appropriations bills as well as the surface transportation reauthorization bill. The earmarking has been the source of almost all of the federal funding for the ACE projects and for the 5760. No, I take that back, not for the 5760. That actually secured grant funding from the Tiger Grant program. But for the ACE project, the earmarking was very important to our federal funds, which as of today total over $200 million in federal funds. So the staff prepared a report to the governing board, which recommended certain priority projects, including the remaining ACE projects that are not yet in construction, that we would ask our members of Congress in the San Gabriel Valley to consider our nomination of those projects for an earmark request through the appropriations bill, and then relevant appropriations bill, and then also for through the surface transportation reauthorization bill. We have a very tight deadline on that. It's essentially by the end of this month, we have to submit request forms. There's a form to fill out. We have to submit those along with support letters. And we're proposing the 5760 project, like I said, the remaining ACE projects, and then also an earmark request for the San Gabriel Valley Regional Housing Trust, which has identified a pipeline of affordable housing projects in various San Gabriel Valley cities that have relatively small, in most cases, relatively small funding shortfalls and could get underway relatively soon. Similar to the projects in Pomona, a project in Pomona and a project in Claremont that were awarded state grant funding. And with that, the Pomona project should be breaking ground relatively soon. So with that, that concludes my report, and be happy to answer questions if any.
Thank you, Paul. It looks like Member Lyons has her hand up.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Paul, I just have a more general question. Since it's been 10 years since we've had any earmarks, that's longer than I've been in city government. What can earmarks be designated for? Is it just unlimited, or is it only transportation, or what is it?
Oh, it's the earmarking takes place across the 12 appropriations bills. So surface transportation is one of those bills. Included in that bill is housing, urban development. So it's the annual appropriations bill for all of the federal agencies across the board. They have the potential for earmarking through those.
Okay, so it's a really big deal then.
It is a big deal, although we have to caution that Congress has imposed self-limitations on this. They're not going to earmark any more than 1% of the annual appropriation bill. And they're basically, each member is limited to no more, we are understanding 10 requests. And I have to say, when this was done 10 years ago, the amounts that an agency like ours, say, was able to get through the annual appropriations bill was relatively small. anywhere from 500,000 to maybe $2 million. So this is not funding that's going to make or break your project typically. It's typically the last funding in. The surface transportation bills did have much more significant earmark amounts. But this time around, from what we've heard, we could probably expect anywhere from 5 to maybe 20 million at the most, 25 million out of the surface transportation bill.
Thank you very much. That's good.
Thank you, Paul. I'm going to go with Member Moss and then Supervisor Solis.
Just real quickly, I was just actually probably going to make a comment. Paul, you said that this project has fallen to number 11. This is the first time in how many years that it hasn't actually moved up in severity in any way. I mean, that's kind of, good sign, but it kind of threw me off when you said it.
Yeah, it did fall. I was surprised to hear it as well. And I don't know if that's because of the terrible situation elsewhere in the country where these other projects now have even more, truck movement that is congested. I've heard the other locations are in places like Atlanta and then on the Eastern Seaboard as well. So yeah, we fell to 11, but frankly, you don't even want to be in the top 20, frankly.
I hope it doesn't hurt us any, but we've been pounding on our chests on that for a while. So, but
I don't think so. I mean, honestly, the difference between, where we were at whatever it was, 6 or 7 and now to 11, it's not, I don't think it's that significant. The fact is just to be in that top tier is really significant, I think. And the hours of delay and the collisions in that confluence are, I think, frankly, unacceptable. And a lot of this is nationally driven. I mean, this is, nationally driven trade due to policies to favor trade. And we certainly favor that, imports as well as exports. But with that, the federal government, I think, has an obligation to step up and contribute towards the solution to the 5760 confluence.
Great.
Thank you, sir.
Supervisor Solis?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. And sorry for the delay here, but I'm excited to hear about earmarks. We've been talking about this here at the county as well as in Metro, and just wondering how we can coordinate because we're all going to be going to the same members, I would think, and each of them will be restricted in terms of how many appeals they can put in. I think it's 10 each. And then typically the 5 top would be considered. And I would imagine that the way this is going to go is they're going to look at regionality in terms of impact and the greatest bang for your buck, so to speak. And so hopeful that's happening with our staff. Paul, can you elaborate a little bit on that? What you are doing, or if you have begun?
Yeah, absolutely, Supervisor. And we have reached out to your staff to keep them abreast of both the grant application and now with the earmark request. That came before the governing board last week. So that identified our priorities. And I want to let you know as well, given your dual role with Metro and with this committee, I've coordinated with Metro staff, with the goods movement staff on a strategy for requesting an earmark because our earmark and they're agreeable to it. I don't know if Metro is going to put in as well an earmark request. I think they're a
They
little
will.
for the 5760 is what I was going to say.
I'm not sure, but we should work on that.
Yeah, and so I've been keeping them in the loop because I wanted to make sure that the earmark request didn't have an impact on the outstanding grant application because on the one hand, we're submitting for a discretionary grant. On the other hand, we have an earmark request. Now they come out of 2 separate fiscal year bills. So the grant comes out of the previous fiscal year. The earmark request will come out of the current fiscal year. I don't know how US DOT is going to handle a project where you have an outstanding grant amount plus you've got an earmark request. But I think it was prudent for us to go to really pursue both opportunities, frankly. The grant, because there's no guarantee we'll get a grant. There's also no guarantee that we'll get an earmark because the members, as you point out, are going to be, they're going to have to winnow this down, all of these requests. But we'll continue to coordinate with LA Metro staff.
part of my understanding is that for earmarks, they're really looking at funding things that will be complete because it's not ongoing funding. So you have to understand that. So we should be looking at projects that it may just need another tranche of money to conclude. And that's what's going to be really tricky for us because we only have 2 weeks to really put all this together. So it's really forcing all of us to be very focused and strategic. So I just wanted to say that, and then wanted to, thank those folks that are supportive of Affordable Housing Trust. I know that's a little separate from what our purview is, but as you know, Metro does provide assistance for housing, for low income, for veterans, for homeless, for domestic violence, for transitional age youth. And I'm just wondering if that's something that perhaps ACE can start to carry on as well, since we have acquisition of a lot of properties that fall along these transit corridors, that we could do a better job of maximizing our regional footprint in terms of expanding it, particularly in the San Gabriel Valley, where we have very little or minimal affordable and low-income housing. I think that's something that perhaps maybe the board should look at and the CEO and work with us, and maybe work with Metro to see how we can futuristically look at how we meet our goals, because we're defined by SCAG and by the state government, federal government, to meet certain benchmarks. And I know all of us are trying to work towards that, but it's so slow, and we'll be penalized if we don't make an honest effort. So I think, we should think about that.
Absolutely, it's a great suggestion. And as you know, we've coordinated with for instance, the city of El Monte, 2 affordable housing projects for homeless veterans, and the second project over on Baldwin Avenue for homeless families. And so what we can do, I think, is in addition to that, continue to coordinate with the host jurisdiction as it comes to the disposition of our surplus property. We can also we'll reach out to the San Gabriel Valley Regional Housing Trust, which was essentially established by the COG to coordinate the city's efforts on this regional housing, try to bring in additional funding. We'll make them, we'll make them aware that when we have this surplus property, that we'll reach out to the San Gabriel Valley Regional Housing Trust staff on that.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Member Mahmood? And you're
Yes, very, very briefly, Supervisor, I just wanted to let you know that the city of South Pasadena is earnestly trying to augment our affordable housing through acquisition of Caltrans homes in our jurisdiction. It's something my community has been burdened by these homes, many of which are currently unoccupied. We would not disturb the current priority that is afforded to income qualified tenants, but we're absolutely seeking to maximize these homes, the availability of these homes, to add to much, much needed affordable housing in my jurisdiction. And Paul, that was a great suggestion to coordinate the Regional Housing Trust, because we are in discussions with them for assistance with regard to our potential acquisition of these homes. And it's important to know, and thank you so much, Supervisor, for your reminder that Metro is providing some funding that's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, before we conclude this part of the agenda, I know we just talked about earmarks, but are you hearing anything about now that we've have the relief funds that are coming to the cities? Have you heard anything on any infrastructure dollars? I know that President Biden, there's been a lot of conversation about a sort of Great Works, Great Society kind of program around infrastructure. Do you have any updates on that?
What I've heard, and some of you may have also, is that that's the next order of business for the Biden administration. Now that they have the American Rescue Plan or package through, and the assistance going out to individuals and businesses through that, and municipalities and states, that the next order of business is a very large infrastructure package. We're going to be tracking that very closely. Right now, I'm tracking it primarily for the purposes of this committee through the Coalition for America's Gateways and Trade Corridors in Washington, D.C. And we've weighed in already with the administration on what we'd like to see for the trade corridor specific programs that are beneficial to the ACE project, to the SR 5760, and that's how we tracked it. The administration came out with an announcement just today of a massive, another $1 trillion plus package for infrastructure, much needed, I think, long-term investment and recovery for our country and bringing our infrastructure up to par. So that's what I've heard, but we'll continue to track that and share with the committee.
That's encouraging. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to go back to you, Eric.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Paul. Next, I will continue on the Director's monthly report under contracting. In the last 4 weeks, staff issued 2 contract modifications. I would like to make a correction to our report on Biggs Cardoza Associates design and engineering support for the Fullerton Road grade separation project. We issued Task Order 5, Revision 9, in the amount of $149,441. We inaccurately stated under that section where fiscal impact we listed as 0. Again, please accept my apology for not catching the information, the accurate information. The contract modification was $149,441. However, the number is correct in the subsequent bullet points, and that is the total staff authorized amount to date on this contract is $211, which included the modification that we just made as part of the Revision 9. Therefore, the cumulative use of available contingency for this project remains as what we have reported in this report as 79.2%. The contract modification, the second contract modification that we made was for AECOM's pre-construction services for the Montebello project, as we previously reported to the committee that we authorized revision number 5, and that is solely for time extensions only and no cost increase and no change to the compensation. With that, please accept my apology for the inaccurate information that we included, and I will be glad to answer any questions that you may have. And one last thing is that I have offered to every committee members to have opportunity to meet with you to go over any items that you may have concern. I will continue to reach out to each of you before each committee meeting. With that, I would be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Eric. It looks like Member Mahmood, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Eric, did you just say that there is no change in compensation under the contract? I'm sorry, I didn't catch what you just said.
Yes, Member Mahmood, under Biggs Cardoza, contract number 12-03B as boy, the justification for us to issue that contract amendment was due to the additional engineering support needed for the invitation for bids for the Fullerton project. We issue a contract modification in the amount of $149,441. That amount is also included in the following bullet point of $334,211. So what we did in terms of typo really was we should have reflected the actual dollar amount of $149,441. The rest of the report remains correct. And member Mahmood, I understand that you're going to comment on, therefore, there was a change to the scope. There was a change to compensation. And you are correct. I took your comments to heart. In the future, we'll further clarify and do even better job on QA and QC.
Right, and I just want to flag this issue for the committee. I find the way that we do our, quite frankly, our accounting extremely confusing with the task order. And I'm hoping that the subcommittee can consider a more simplified version. When I was a public works lawyer at both LADWP and Metropolitan Water District, and I believe this is the prevailing practice at most large engineering public works entities, you have the set contract amount. That is your project amount. And staff, when I was at MWD, and granted I retired 10 years ago, I don't know what the current limitations are. And as part of my services on the committee, I will inquire to update that. But when I last left MWD, staff was given the discretion. Well, first of all, the board knew exactly what the contract was going to cost, what the project was going to cost, because there was a specific contract amount for design and engineering. There was a separate, specific, discrete contract amount for the actual construction of the project. And as to the capital projects, the construction contract, staff was given the ability to amend contracts. It was the greater of either 5% or $250,000. And obviously under our current procedures, staff just has a running ability to increase 10%. And I do appreciate Eric and I had an extended conversation on Friday. And I understand that one of the things that used to occur that was highly inappropriate, in my opinion, is that when staff then issued what are essentially change orders, they slapped another 10% on that running total. Well, now Eric is no longer doing that. But my concern is that as a committee that is responsible for overseeing these projects, it is very, very difficult to keep track of the extent to which staff is doing a good job in managing costs under the contract. And I believe that is why we are in our current position, that we do not presently have enough money to complete all of the projects that we intend to undertake. So this is a very serious matter. And I'm hoping that the people on the subcommittee are prepared to really roll up their sleeves and engage in a vigorous review and recommendation as to how we prevent what happened before from repeating itself in the future, or else we're going to be in even worse shape with regard to the ACE projects that we're authorized to conduct, but for which presently we don't have enough money, let alone the other new projects that COG intends to undertake.
Okay, Eric, do you want to close this out?
Certainly. And again, I want to acknowledge Member Mahmood. I enjoy the conversation, and I think by gathering inputs from all of you, you represent different agencies, and it is our job to continue to deliver projects within the budget. And our agency has been successful in the past. We're also at a crossroad that we do need to continue to improve on our processes. So I look forward to the dialogue and the workshop, and the going forward, how do we, especially as we continue to extend our reach on delivering projects for Metro that are different than the traditional projects that we are accustomed to. I think we look forward to working very collaboratively with other funding agencies, and so that our process is in line and consistent with other agencies as well. So with that, this item is for receive and file only. If there is no additional discussion, the Chair, this item, we can move on to the next item.
Okay, which is, thank you, Eric. So we're moving on to agenda item 7, which is construction project progress reports. I turn it back to you, Eric.
Great, thank you very much. I would like to invite my 3 project managers to deliver, to provide you with an update on their projects. First, Charles Tan will provide an update on the Fairway grade separation project, followed by Renee Coronel on the Durfee Avenue grade separation project. Last but not least, Andre Ramirez will provide an update on the Fullerton Road grade separation project. Charles, take it away.
Thank you, Eric. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Amy, the next slide, please. The picture on the lower right-hand corner is what we presented to the committee last month. The UP track workforce is laying ties and rails, but we are happy to announce that this month, the track is ready for the cutover. So the track on the left-hand side, you see that endpoint? That's actually when we need to stop the train service over the weekend, and we apply for a curfew, and we'll shift the train office and then splice to that point. So both tracks is like ready for the cutover. Next slide, please. And in the past, some committee members asked, how do we build the track? So I would like to take this opportunity to show you. The picture on the left, these trains or the ballast that traveling on trains in these hoppers that are coming in through the existing mainline tracks. So by the time they get to our project sites, the machine on the right, the blue one, they call it the shooter. So what they did is they basically take the ballast from the hopper and then they shoot it through this bridge and drop it into our main line, which is right adjacent to the operating railroad. So that's why it's so critical that we need to keep the existing railroad open in surface so we can use that to transport our material to the site and build a new track. So this is like a week-long project. We are shooting multiple trains to the track to make it happen. Next slide, please, Amy. And this is after we shoot the ballast, we call this like profile machine, which is like this yellow vehicles on the left. It will run up and down the track that we are building. Now, the little picture on the right-hand side is what it looks like when they just drop the rail onto the bare ground. So it looks like spaghettis, it twists around. So this machine has computer built in. So they take our construction drawing plans, they put it into the system. The machine, when it drive on the rail, they know whether they are up or down or how much discrepancies. So they will run it up and down multiple times for multiple hours, and then they adjust it inch by inch until the track alignment is correct. Next, please. On the other hand, we have the civil crew working on property owner's driveway. So this particular driveway is right to our project sites, and they have a lot of truck traffic coming in over the weekend and the weekdays. So we asked for a curfew window. So we started on that weekend at 5 a.m. in the morning. So by noon, we are finishing it up. So their weekday operation is not impacted. So on Monday morning, the following week, they have the driveway back. So we are using these high early strength concrete instead of like normally cure in 7 days to 28 days. It achieves the strength in 24 hours. But it requires a lot of skills and a lot of cooperations. Next slide. The utility companies are also working their way. So on the left, the water company, they are installing the service line and connection and water valves. This is kind of like the last stage of the service connection we need to do. After that, then all the utilities will be cleared, and then we can ready to pave the intersection. The picture on the right-hand side is the Edison crew. So they are installing the traffic signal conduits for the intersection. and the street lights as well. Next, please. And this is what it looks like today on Fairway Drive north of Business Parkway. The center median is all in place. So the little picture on the right-hand side is what you've seen last month. So they're just grading last month. So this month we have the median curve already in. So ready for the hardscape work in the future. Next, please. And we didn't forget the south side of the bridge. Remember, we finished the facade panel and contractor is installing the hand railing. So pretty much the south side of the bridge is done after this phase of work. So that's conclude my brief report on Fairway Drive projects, and I'll be more than happy to take any questions if there's any. Seeing none, and I'll pass the podium back to Eric.
Next, I believe Renee is going to provide an update on Durfee Avenue.
Hello,
Renee?
committee members. I'll give a quick update on the Durfee project in the city of Pico Rivera. So in this picture, the Union Pacific crews are on site. We finished the bridge last month. So now they're laying the tracks over the bridge and the adjacent tracks. They're doing this a little bit different than on Fairway. Right here, they're bringing in precast panels. So they're just putting them over the tracks in, I think, 80-foot sections. And so what you see there is tracks going over the new bridge. Next picture. We're continuing the grading work on the adjacent streets. This is a new street called New Street. And as you can see, the street is taking shape. Next picture. Right here, this is Durfee looking south. This is as you enter the grade separation. The bridge is completed, the first phase, as you look towards the top of the picture. So this is the roadway section. There is a lot of commercial traffic on this street, so we are putting 2 layers of concrete. What you see there is the first layer is down. We're putting a reinforcement, and the next layer goes on this month. Next slide. And on Durfee Avenue, the retaining walls we're constructing them. That's the footing. We're placing concrete for the footing. Once we put the concrete for the footing, then we're going to put it for the stem, the wall. And after that, the street's going to take shape. Next picture. And that's it for Durfee. I can answer any questions.
Great, thanks, Renee. Andres.
Good afternoon, committee chair, members of the committee. I'll be giving an update on the Fullerton Road grade separation project. As you are aware, Fullerton Road has been suspended for a little bit over a year, or just under a year so far, and we're getting close to restarting the project, so we figured it's a good time to provide an update on where we stand with the project. So you'll see in this staging plan here, several of the stages on the project. The red stage that you see down at the bottom is stage 1C. That work is complete. It's closest to the 60 freeway, goes underneath the freeway. And like I said, that is complete and is open to traffic currently. Up on the northern part, the upper part of this photo, you'll see the blue stage. That's stage 2. It's got several parts to that stage, but that work is mostly complete up there. We'll give you some pictures of what work is complete here in a second. But what we're focusing on is really the northernmost part, which is the orange, which is the intersection of Roland, San Jose, and Fullerton Road, and then the intersection of Gale and Fullerton Road, which you see in the green and the yellow. Those stages are the what's currently opened up and needed to be completed. So we go to the next slide. So here you're in stage 3F, looking at stage 3D. Stage 3D is the north side, what you see beyond the K-rail there, the part that's demolished, and the road that you see is in stage 3F. Once we complete stage 3D, we will be flipping the work. So the work will then take place on the south side of Gale, and then the north side will be opened up. If you look at go to the next slide, please. So here you are actually on Gale, and you're looking east. Fullerton is to the, is perpendicular to this photo here. What you see is stage 3D to the left of the K-rail. We've installed the majority of the retaining walls on both sides of Fullerton. You see the one on the west side here, but we still have to excavate the road and then repave it. So we have to go down to, lowering the road, excavate it, install the utilities in there, and then pave the road to go under the railroad track. If you go to the next slide. So here now we're on the north side of the railroad tracks. You're on Fullerton Road and you're looking south. This is a good portion of stage 2 that you're looking at. You'll see that we have already lowered the road here and we've already paved the road. We have sidewalks that remain up on the entire range, the entire length of this stage. We still have to install the sidewalks. And then to the left, you'll see the property that the agency owns, where the pump station will go. So the pump station work has to be completed. And then we also are trying to focus on one of the early tasks when we try to complete the project is working on that on the right side, the corner property there, the Lee and Rowe property. We're trying to expedite that work and get their parking lot turned back over to them. If you go to the next slide. So here you are further north on Fullerton. We're at Roland and San Jose. Roland and San Jose still hasn't started. So that will also start when we do the completion work. But you're also looking at the extent of the completed road work on Fullerton Road. And again, we just are lacking sidewalks for that work. If you go to the next slide. So this is our timeline of what we have projected for Fullerton. The project started way back in 2016. We experienced the suspension in April of 2020. We made an attempt to bid the completion work one time. We put that out in September, but we unfortunately had to reject bids in November. So we repackaged the plans and specs, and we put out IFB 3, as we call it, in February. That is currently out on the street. We are expecting proposals to be received on April 6th when we will open bids. We will be bringing, if everything goes well, we'll be bringing to the April committee recommendation for award for a contractor with the expectation that we start construction again in July. And we're looking at about 36 months, which includes closeout. We're about the winter of 23-24 to complete the project. And that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you,
Are there any
Andre.
questions? I'm sorry. Are there any questions at this time? Okay. Anything else, Dad?
Member Mahmood.
I had just one quick question. So did you have a pre-construction conference on this?
Yes, we did. We had.
And how many contractors appeared?
I believe we had total, because we had three, because of COVID, we had 3 different conferences. I believe we had a total of 8 contractors that showed up.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Eric, anything else to add?
Nope. There's no additional information on the update, but we're really pleased. We'll continue to share the project updates with the committee, as we have offered the committee in the past. As now the weather is getting better, we will do our best and coordinate with the committee if they are interested to meet out in the field. We will be glad to provide you with a socially distanced and a safe walkthrough so that you can experience, witness what is happening on the ground.
Thank you, Eric. Okay. So it looks like we can go ahead and move on to the next item, which is the approval of our meeting minutes. There was an error, as you pointed out, that Vice Chair Lyons was included as part of the subcommittee, and it should have read Member Moss. So in the motion, I just asked that it include that revision.
Chair, I'll
Could I
make
go-
a motion that
could I go to-
minutes are approved with the revision.
And that's Vice Chair Lyons?
Yes, Lion.
Okay,
Member
can I get a second? Okay, got a second from Member Moss. Okay, roll call vote. Eric?
Great. Chair Tim Sonnerball,
Yes.
Vice Chair Nancy Lyons,
Yes.
Member Becky Shevelin,
Yes.
Member Corey Moss,
Yes.
Member Diane Mahmood,
Yes.
Member Hilda Solis,
Yes.
Member Margaret Clark,
Yes.
Member Maria Morales,
Yes.
Member Scarlett Peralta,
Yes.
Member Tim Hepburn.
Yes.
Chair Thunderbolt, the item is passed unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, we go ahead and move on to agenda item 10, which is the approval of task order 2, which is a revision 10 for Berg & Associates for construction management services for the Fullerton Road grade separation project. I turn it over to you, Eric.
Great. Actually, item number 9, there's a special meeting minute or a special meeting
Forgive
minute
me.
of March.
Yeah, forgive me for that, Eric. Let's go back
Okay.
to 9, which is the approval of special meeting minutes of March 1st, 2021. Can I get a motion?
Member Moss will move the item.
Second,
Okay.
Hepburn.
Second, Hepburn. Okay, you want to do a roll call vote, Eric?
Great. Chair Ken Thunderbolt,
Yes.
Vice Chair Nancy Lyons,
Yes.
Member Becky Shovelin,
Yes.
Member Corey Moss,
Yes.
Member Diana Mahmood,
Yes.
Supervisor Hilda Solis,
Yes.
Member Margaret Clark,
Yes.
Member Maria Morales,
Yes.
Member Scarlett Peralta,
Yes.
Member Tim Hepburn.
Yes.
Chair, the item is passed unanimously.
Great, thank you. All right, now we can move on to agenda item 10, which is the Fullerton Road grade separation, a possible contract with Berg & Associates. Eric, I turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Staff is recommending the committee to authorize the executive director to issue task order number 2, revision 10, not to exceed $7,557,011 to Burke and Associates for construction management services associated with the completion of the Fullerton Road grade separation project. We are also changing our format a little bit. Our senior project manager, Andres Ramirez, will provide additional information pertaining to this recommendation. And then I will wrap up after his presentation. I will be ready to answer any questions you may have. So Andres?
Thank you, Eric, and once again, good afternoon. So this item, as Eric mentioned, is for task order 2, revision 10 to the Berg & Associates agreement for the construction management services for Fullerton. As you heard in my previous presentation, the Fullerton Road grade separation project has been heavily impacted by a suspension and delays from the previous contractor and the contract termination. We currently are out on the street to receive bids for the completion on April 6th. And because of the delays and the suspension, several consultant agreements will need to be negotiated and extended to provide support to complete the project. One of those is this Berg & Associates agreement for the construction management services. Back in 2014, the agency entered into an agreement with Berg and issued task order number 1 for the pre-construction CM services. In 2016, task order number 2 was issued to provide those CM services during construction. Since then, task order number 2 has had a total of 9 revisions. Revision number 6 and subsequently revision number 7 were issued to Berg to provide support during the suspension and the termination and the negotiations that went with that. Also to provide monitoring of the site and oversight of an emergency maintenance contractor that we hired to take care of the site while it's suspended, and also to assist with the first rebidding efforts for the project. These 2 revisions extended their services until December of 2020. And then because we projected that construction would start back up in January if the first bid was successful, we were already in negotiations with Berg to extend their CM services during construction. However, when the bids were rejected in November, negotiations changed to add time for the second rebid. That would go from January 2021 to June of 2021. And that was revision 8 that was brought to the CPCC in December of 2020, which covered Berg for that second rebid, to also provide us support for the dispute resolution process that we were going through, and continued site maintenance support. We continued negotiations with Berg, but had to adjust when the settlement agreement was reached in January. This caused some of the services that were approved in the December task order revision to no longer be necessary. So we decided to include the revisions to that task order in this global negotiations that we had. We reached agreement with Berg in mid-February on a value and a timeline for the extension that would cover from January 1st of 2021 through June 30th of 2024, when the closeout process of the project is scheduled to be complete. So we are currently recommending that the committee authorize the execution of revision 10 to task order number 2 with Berg and Associates in the amount, as Eric had mentioned, of $7,557,011 to provide the support necessary to complete the Fullerton Road grade separation project. That concludes my presentation. I will turn it back over to Eric.
Thank you, Andre. And we'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Member Moss, it looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah.
Yes. I guess, just real briefly, I wanted to ask, given the circumstances and all the, difficulties and complications with the Fullerton Road grade separation project, I just wanted to get a little bit of feedback, I guess, from staff on, what was the reasoning for staying with Berg? Were there any other concerns? And, obviously you made this decision. What was your, and what is your confidence level based on, given, all this difficulty that we have experienced with the Fullerton Road project?
I will take the first cut, and Andre, I will rely on my my associate Andre to provide additional information if necessary. I think they are a concerted effort when we review the value engineering, especially when the very first rebid invitation for bids, IFB1, was issued and then subsequently unsuccessful. They were concerted effort to look at whether we should consider other potential contract management services, and would we get better pricing. The fact is, we already have quite a few unknowns already. If we were to go for another CM contract, we would have to reopen the entire procurement process, and that potentially will add to even more time delay. Once again, I would like to bring the committee back to where we were 9 months ago. There were a lot of ongoing discussions, including dealing with the contractor that was terminated, and then the ongoing bid proposal, bid package that was being prepared. All of those efforts require additional engineering design support. So I have every confidence in my staff, in our team. They know what they're doing. They're doing their best to contain the cost escalation. And that was the decision that they recommended. And we spent a lot of time negotiating with Berg to bring down their costs. Again, just in the last 4 months, their scope have changed simply because we were able to resolve the contract dispute with the previous contractor. Subsequently, that also require us to renegotiate with them on the cost. They have been a very good partner. Their rates are comparable industry-wide, but for the sake of time, potential additional time spent for seeking another contractor, it is our decision to move on the negotiation with the current contractor.
Thank you for that, Eric. I do appreciate it. I just felt that it's important to, and I'm not questioning staff at all because I'm not, this is not my area of expertise, but I think it helps everybody to understand and feel better knowing, what staff's thoughts were and how they felt about that process. So I thank you for that.
And Member Moss, thanks for your comments. I also want to acknowledge how grateful we are working with your city staff. This project impacts your city tremendously. We understand that, and but we also appreciate that your staff are willing to work with us and to do everything that we could, especially just on the regular daily maintenance to reduce the traffic congestion. So once again, I want to acknowledge the partnership.
I will take that back and give them the compliment. I agree with you. My staff is incredible. I never miss an opportunity to, tell them how great they are. So I'll let them know you said the same. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. All right, let's go to Member Hepburn and then Member Mahmood.
Actually, I think Member Mahmood was first. Mr.
Well,
Chair.
all right.
It doesn't matter.
Well, just go Member Hepburn, and then we'll go to Member Mahmood. Thank you.
Staying in order, sir. I want to thank staff, and I want to thank Mr. Shen also for making time to talk to individuals like myself last week. I know that he's got a busy schedule, but kind of keep us up on what's going on, current situations with everything that they're undertaking right now. I think I'm just going to air some frustration, and I know we're on the path of recovery now, but my frustration is every time I look at all these task orders and change orders when it pertains to the Fullerton grade separation, that we just keep chipping away at the monies that were put for this original project and how much it's going to cost additionally and what projects are going to be suffering because of the fact of this. It's so frustrating for me to see this when, 100,000 here, 100,000 there, $1 million here and $1 million there. And after the cancellation of the Shimmick contract, it's very frustrating for me because, and like I say, we're on the mend, and I appreciate everything Mr. Shen's doing, appreciate him being here and staff. It's just that we need to get this project started back up. We need to make sure that it's cost effective, but every time we keep moving forward another month, it just keeps chipping away at the costs that we have and the money we have for other projects. So full steam ahead, but also cross your T's and dot your I's like you guys are doing, because we sure don't need another situation like this. Thank you.
Hey, Member Hepburn. Member Mahmood.
This requested adjustment really gives me heartburn. And I say that because, as I recall, and as evidenced by the progress report, in this project, the project is more or less 40, maybe even 50% complete. We were told at the time that we approved the Shimmick termination agreement that the project was 40%, and I think an argument can be made that it's actually greater than that based upon the presentation today. The original contract amount for this work, and this just reinforces, as well as Member Moss's comments about, well, are they really doing a good job? Is it feasible to substitute them in? Once you go down a road with a given consultant, it is extremely difficult to substitute them out because they have gained an awful lot of knowledge regarding the project. And essentially, there would be additional cost to ACE if we were to go with a different consultant, not only because of the delay that Eric mentioned, which is absolutely correct, but because essentially you have to accommodate a new learning curve by a subsequent consultant. This reinforces the need to have a total contract amount in mind when we approve the work so that we are not doing this piecemeal as we currently are. We originally approved a contract, a task order for all construction management services for the duration of the contract of $11.871 million. That was supposed to cover the entirety of the construction. To that, we added $1.13 million for basically to cover additional costs that incurred because of the dispute with Shimmick and the subsequent need to rebid the project. That's a lot of money. That alone takes us to over $13 million. So my question is, if we're 40% complete saying that conservatively, and there's 60% of the work remaining. And Berg originally agreed to do the entirety of the work for 11.871 million. What about the 60% of the 11.871 that should be remaining in the original appropriation to do the work?
Member Mamu, I appreciate your feedback. In fact, over the weekend, I thought over and over again, and I also had a conversation with my staff. I'm going to take my first cut, and maybe my staff Andre could also chime in. I think, although I agree with your assessment that the construction had only complete around 40% as we have reported. The project itself has been delayed for at least 2 to 3 years. The clock doesn't stop ticking, especially when we rely on construction management services. Along the way, we have also tasked Berg and Associates, their expertise to help us to protect the agency as we were being challenged by the contractor who ran into dispute with us. So I want to provide you with that assurance that the construction management service had we not encountered the dispute with the previous contractor, I would have agreed that their burn rate, their expenses should be in line with the construction activities. But if you look at in the last 2-3 years during the dispute, we pull Berg and Associates, we utilize their expertise to compile information and to the extent possible to protect the agency to reduce potential liabilities and exposure during the dispute. Those were not accounted for. Therefore, we had to issue additional authorization. And so I think this is where I think it's challenging for us, for me, to defend that it should be dollar by dollar, percent by percent, based on the construction activity. But in reviewing all of the previous approved contracts and also the amount of work that they put in at our direction to protect the agency's interest during the dispute, I thought I have to say that they did an admirable job at a flip of a switch to protect us because we changed directions twice, issuing the IFB 1 and then failed, and then we have then gone full speed ahead to protect us on all the documentation as if we were going full speed into the dispute resolution board. And then we decided to, with your permission, we settle the case. So those stop and go, it does put a lot of strain on the contractor or consultants that we task. And that's where the expenses do occur. We are paying a premium. I don't disagree with you.
Right. My concern, Eric, is we agreed to pay Berg $1.13 million. And the description is to adjust the period of performance due to the contractor's suspension, for assistance in negotiating the termination agreement, for interim site monitoring, and for the first rebid. That's almost 10% of the original contract value. And what is also of concern is there's no statement in this document of the amount that we have paid thus far. All we're being asked to do is to continually increase the amount authorized to the contractor, but we don't even know how much we have paid the contractor. And if we paid the contract, have we already paid the original 11.871 plus the 1.13 million? Have we already paid that? It's just such an extraordinary amount, 7 million. Also, there's discussion later on in some of the later projects that provide for essentially having the CM or the design engineer on site or to allow them to continue to bill for 6 months. That is just an invitation to ask people to spend your money. Contract closeout shouldn't take any more than 60 days. And if they take longer than 60 days, 90 days at the most, then you've got a contractor that is willfully dragging its feet. I don't know in this instance whether or not, based upon what I saw from some of the projects that we'll consider later on, whether or not this 7 point something provides for compensation for six months after contract completion. But this is just, in my view, we are not being given adequate information to approve such a substantial change in the total amount of compensation that we have authorized to date to the contractor, notwithstanding the problems with Shimmick, which we have already, I think, mostly compensated. My last question is, there's a statement that there's a budget adjustment that is necessary. Where does this money come from?
In the current fiscal year, what we're recommending, the current fiscal, previously approved fiscal year for this fiscal year does not account for this amount. Therefore, we make it, we indicated to the board, with your approval, it will be added to our to the current fiscal year budget. But at the same time, in the context of the program, we also explain to you what will be the fiscal impact to our overall program budget. And I'm going to ask Andres if you could help me out in terms of the specific dollar figure.
Sure. So I think to touch on one of the items or just to elaborate on something that Eric mentioned earlier, the reason this contract is needing to be extended or continues to be used is because all our consultant agreements are time and material contracts. They're not a lump sum agreement. So as the time gets spent, they put time in and they invoice us for that time. As far as the budget items are concerned, the fiscal year impact is about $800,000 is what we're looking for to the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget. It's not the entirety of the $7.5 million because that is spread across the 36 months that the project is going to be performed. So the 7.5 does impact the project budget in totality, but we have calculated that for this fiscal year, it's close to $800,000. I believe it's $780,000.
And so how much have we paid this contractor or this consultant thus far?
We have paid out through revision 6. So it was the 11.8 plus the 1.1 as you had requested.
How could we do that when that was supposed to carry us through the entirety of construction?
Because it's paid on a time and material basis.
Yeah, but that means that we're not doing a good job of monitoring their expenses. I mean, it just seems that this is a consultant that's out of control. To pay the entire contract amount already?
The entirety of the original contract agreement time-wise had lapsed. It lapsed in April of last year. So as they were managing construction, they had expended those costs.
I would recommend that we continue this matter for until next month's meeting with the hoped for approval of a construction contract. We shouldn't need CM services until that time. And I would ask that at that time, we have a far more detailed explanation of how previous money was spent, what the original construction duration was, and how much money is expended, a breakdown of those costs in the future to justify such an extraordinary amount.
May I ask for a clarification? Are we to cease the services that they are providing currently until next
Well,
month.
what are they doing? You've got a construction bid. The only thing that I would think might need to be continued is site monitoring. Everything that they should have done. I mean, you've already gone through one rebid. What more would they be doing?
They're doing the rebid, the site monitoring, also the closeout of the Shimmick agreement.
We approved that a long time ago. What is there to do? We approved an amount. What work do they have to do? I don't see anything other than site monitoring. There shouldn't be any responses unless there are a few requests, unless you are getting some bid requests.
Member
There's some
Mahmood,
questions.
Member Mahmood, I think your suggested approach of deferring this item for one more month, I'm going to ask, I think it is a reasonable request, given that you have raised so many questions. If you could give me one quick moment and making sure that my staff, Andres, can confirm that PERCs currently have enough remaining budget to carry us through April 6th. I think it's very important that we don't get into this situation where PERCs is out of contract again, and yet we still need to rely on the CM support to help us on reviewing the bid documents. And the real goal is have bare minimum of consultant support to carry us through the review without exposing ourselves for any potential dispute or protest on bids. And so that we can bring to you on April 22nd for the new bid proposal. Once again, for me, that is the most critical path. If for any reason that we cannot bring to you a recommended contract to re-energize this project on April 22nd, we will further delay and we will further incur additional costs on every aspect, including right-of-way, temporary easement. So I am going to quickly ask Andres to make a quick confirmation. Does PERC have sufficient remaining balance right now to get through April 6th? Or do we have to have some limited approval at this point?
No, we have approval of that last task order revision. It took us actually to June 30th to cover that.
So with that, Member Mahmood, would you accept entertain our, in fact, respond to your request or provide you with additional information, including how much they have billed us, what has been paid out. We'll provide you with additional information and for next month approval.
Thank you. Yes, and this is just a perfect example of the extent of the work that the committee needs to do, because obviously we can't manage projects where a consultant has blown past 100% of the amount to be paid for the duration of construction when the contractor was only 40% complete.
We'll provide you with all the reasons, and also, I continue to look forward to working with you and examine those issues.
Thank you, Eric. Member Lyons, you have your hand up?
I do. I think that Member Mahmood just made a motion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to, I think, put this on hold and look at it again next month with more information. Was that your motion?
Counselor? Thank you. Thank you. Counselor, can we just continue the item? Do we need to take a motion?
You should take action to continue the item, yes.
Okay. All right. We have a first and a second. Just real
Yeah,
quick.
so I'm just seconding Member Mahmood's motion because I knew she was about to make it.
Thank you, Vice Chair Lyons. Real quick, Eric, just before we, as you do your work between now and the next meeting, part of my confusion is I'm just hearing Member Mahmood talk and you talk is that the construction management company, when they were hired, had a specific time in which Shimmick agreed that they would have this project completed from beginning to end. Is that correct?
That is
And because
correct.
of all the delays, it's caused them their own delays, right? And the project still needs to be completed. So if they didn't get paid beyond this period, that perhaps means they can't do work somewhere else, even though they were contracted for that period. So I'm having a hard time understanding that, because what I'm hearing Member Mahmood say is that, well, they have a defined contract, they have to complete it from beginning to end. And I'm hearing you say, well, there's actually a time in which it was supposed to have been completed. It's extending beyond that. So therefore they're asking for additional funds. I may be way off there, but I just need an explanation to understand that.
Well, when we retain construction management services, their scope is highly correlated with the construction activity, and they are being compensated based on time and the material on the specific task. And I think I want to reassure the committee members, when our construction activities stop due to the dispute with Shimmick, the work that Berg and Associates also tapered down, but didn't stop. And so I think we will provide you with additional explanation. I think there are certain tasks where we will tell them to stand down because there's no construction activity, but they are still basic activities that need to be carried, including maintaining records and the overseeing the maintenance crew who is out there. They're still basic expenses. And I don't disagree with Member Mahmood. And I will go back and work with our team, provide you with what expenses were billed and are they legitimate. And again, I think we manage our project with the intent that construction will go full speed ahead and hire a CM contractor to manage just right. They are not staying on project any longer than necessary, but we also understand construction projects, plus minus 3 months, it's not untypical. It could be one heavy rain, or it could be something that one of our stakeholders, such as Union Pacific, when their schedules don't line up with us, then everything gets split. So it's always that fine balance of how much cushion do we want to allot based on the expected project completion date. Again, I appreciate Member Mahmood's pointing out those concerns. We will provide you with additional explanations, and we will continue to do that in every report going forward. And one last thing, Member Mahmood, through our conversation, you also made a very good inquiry. In the future, we will start providing you not only on the not to exceed total value on a contract with a contractor, we will also provide you with the information on how much has been paid to date. So we'll continue to.
Yeah, Eric, I guess what I'm saying, Eric, is that if there's delay after delay after delay, and you have a contract with a management company, at what point when do they stop? I mean, they have other projects that they need to do. So I just asked that you include that in your report as well. I need an explanation for that. All right, we have a motion on the floor. I have a first, I have a second. Let's go ahead and do roll call vote.
Chair Sandoval,
Yes.
Vice Chair Nancy Lyons,
Yes.
Member Becky Shevlin,
Yes.
Member Corey Moss,
Yes.
Member Diana Mahmood,
Yes.
Supervisor Hilda Solis, Member Margaret Clark,
Yes.
Member Maria Morales,
Yes.
Member Scarlett Peralta,
Yes.
and Member Tim Habron.
Yes.
Chair, the motion is passed and is deferred to next month.
Thank you. All right, we can go ahead and move on to agenda item 11, which is the approval of task order 4, revision 6 for Jacobs Engineering for design services during construction for the Fairway Drive grade separation project. Eric.
Thank you, Chair. This is the second of the 4 contract issuance that were coming to the board for approval today. Staff is recommending the committee to authorize the executive director to issue task order number 4, revision number 6, not to exceed $352,677 to Jacobs Engineering for providing additional design support during construction for the Fairway Drive grade separation projects. Senior Project Manager Charles Tam will provide additional information pertaining to this recommendation.
Thank you, Eric. If you recall, in the previous committee meeting, we came to the committee for approval to extend the contract to OHL. And after we established a new schedule for construction, which is early 2023. And then in last October, November time, we came to the committee again and then extend the CM contract for WSP to extend the project and that contract to cover the same duration. Now, I think at that time, Mr. Christoffel, our former chief engineer, mentioned it to the committee as well. We still have budgets for Jacobs at that time, and that's why we are not coming to the board to seek additional approval for budget amendment, but we'll see how we go. And after we evaluate their budget conditions, we find out for them to continue to cover the projects to the end, which is we target to complete by late 2022, slightly earlier than what our original plan. When we look back at the Jacobs contract, that actually will expire by this June. So that's why we need to come to the committee and then seek your approval. First is to extend the contract to cover the end of the project, which is late 2022. And the second, we need to grant a little additional budgets just to cover the efforts that they encountered. Now, in the past, we gone through quite a bit of reviews, resubmittals, and to accommodate UPRR's requests on the shoe fly design. And we also make adjustments to our changes of the design to make it more cost effective. If you recall, project originally called for like stone columns as a soil stabilization. Because it is a very tedious process, so contractors suggest as a value engineering approach to use grounded pier instead. And with that design, there are more subsequent events. We need to seek additional approval from the other agencies. We need to do some calculation checks, things like that, just to make sure the so-called value engineering item works. So those require designers' time on that, which is not originally accounted for. And at the same time, the project actually was originally designed and approved back in 2012, 2013. As time goes by, a lot of the hardware equipment that is spelled out at the for the project, actually we find like a newer version for it, or that's like more updated. So contractors came across those questions, and then they need to ask designer if they are amenable for these, like we call it new technologies, which is more benefit for the maintenance agency, in this case, City of Industry. So all these like require additional efforts for the designer. So that's why we are coming to the board and then seek your permission to approve this additional request for $352,677 for Jacobs to extend their service to support construction until the end of 2022. That's the substantial completion date. Now, but we intended to seek your approval to grant a couple of months after the substantial completion to extend their contract amendment to June of 2023. Those 6 months we account for based on our past experience. When the project is substantially completed, we still need the designer to help us on the finalizing the plaques and legal descriptions, because we have surplus property and easement that we need to grant it the ownership back to LA County or other utility agency like county sand districts or gas company or phone company. Now, what we plan is what we plan. Now, what the actual utility line landed at, sometimes it may not be the same as what we have on the plan. So these plaques and legals need to be finalized and checked by LA County Public Works folks before they accept the maintenance and accept the right-of-ways. So those efforts we need to account for, and we anticipate it will happen at the first and the second quarter of 2023. And also, part of the contract designer's obligation is to complete the as-built plan and package the file and then assist the CM team to do the closeout process. So we leave very little budgets for them, but we leave more like time for them, so we don't have to come back for a very small amount of money. But because if we set the contract expire at the end of 2022, and those efforts is not coming to play, then we still have a couple of months of buffer time for us to deal with those little issues. So that's why we are seeking your approval to approve this amount in the amount of $352,677 and extend the contract to 2023 of June. So with that, I conclude my presentation, and I'll be happy to take any questions if there's any.
Thanks, Charles. I know Member Mamou has a question. I do want to just supplement what Charles has said, and also the item before, and also two more items after. There is a difference between task orders versus change order. And I think I want to have an opportunity to clarify. The agency's practice has been based on task order. Each task is strictly negotiated based on the scope that we need for that moment, versus change order implies that you have issued a contract and then suddenly you find something that you want to do differently, you issue a change order. So I just want to bring you back, because when I first came to this agency 3 months ago, it was very intimidating. And then I studied further, and there's a distinction. So here, when our project managers provide a recommendation on a task order, in fact, it is almost equivalent of based on needs, based on the needs of that specific task. They scope out the work necessary. They ask the consultants to price it, and then we attempt to get the best price that we could, and then we make our recommendation accordingly. So I hope that provides a little bit of clarification, I hope. And now I would take Member Mamou's question.
Thank you very much, Eric. I just want to first observe that as an organization which presently does not have enough money to complete all of the ACE projects, it is to this organization's benefit to obtain final dollars for each project sooner rather than later. And 6 months after the project completion just seems at like an extended period of time. So Charles, with regard to the legal descriptions, is that the engineers that are providing legal descriptions? Number one, that's my first question.
The short answer is yes, because part of this contract, when we set up for final design, we have the surveyor work as a sub-consultant to the prime designer, which is Jacob. So that's why actually on this change order request, some of the budget is allocated for the sub-consultants to do the legal description check and make sure that the easement that we finally have the utility line laying at coincide. So it's more like a back checking process.
Thank
So
you.
it's
No,
not
I
gonna cost-
understand. I understand. But it seems to me that there's no reason why that surveyor work should necessarily occur after the completion of construction. You can, this is a sequential process. You can do a lot of this work during construction rather than wait until after the contractor has completed the project, particularly because this is a linear project. You've got segments that all along the contractor has completed.
Understood. Part of the Los Angeles County Public Works Department's requirement is they will not accept the job, or they will not even like kick in their so-called right-of-way easement transfer process until the project is like substantially completed. Yes, we can do a lot of groundwork up front when the actual construction contractor finished the work, but we need to sit down with the county folks and then address their comment if there's any. So that's why we leave the time there. Now, once again, this task order revision is set up as time and material basis. If the work effort is not kicking in, consultant is not charging us. So we just leave the time there.
I understand that, but my concern is that so long as the contract is open, the consultant can bill more to the organization. And the sooner the contract ends, the sooner, number one, the consultant's ability to bill us ends. And number two, the sooner we have more certainty regarding the total project cost. And with money presently being short on our projects, it's really important. The sooner that we get a handle on what the total cost is for projects that are under construction, the better position we are to know whether or not and how best to address the shortfall in funding for those other projects for which construction has not yet commenced. So my second question is, I know the contractor usually provides as-built. Do you recall when under the construction contract, the contractor is supposed to provide the as-built?
Usually they will provide the as-built during the closeout time. Is about like 3 months after the substantial completion.
Do you know what the contract requires?
The contract required them to provide as-built for us. Yes.
Right, but I'm asking the date by which they're supposed to provide the as-built.
Usually it's like within 90 to 120 days.
Okay, Eric, in the future, again, this is something that the contractor should be able to be completing on while construction is occurring. I'm afraid that we have been generous in allowing such an extended period of time that just drags out the project, and it just allows contractors and consultants to further bill, and we have less control over total project costs with an extended period. I do understand if the construction contract documents are so loose as to require 90 days, that's to me a really long time for the contractor to do that, because they should have been able to do a lot of this work during construction. I would recommend in future contracts that we accelerate the date by which the as-built are due, so that we are not in a position of having to maintain a CM or design engineer presence on the project for 6 months, because that really is too long a period. And like I said, it just gives us less ability to control costs. Thank you.
And Member Mahmood, thanks for your comment. We'll take into consideration. I think Charles also brought up an important issue that we will continue to, as we review our own contract language, is that most of our projects do involve at the end other agencies, other permitting agencies. We are also at their mercy to accept the final work that we produce. So again, I appreciate that you point that out. I will continue to work with my contracting colleagues and also my PMs to ensure that the future recommended contract period that would be reasonably sufficient to cover what is necessary without giving contractors the ability to drag it on.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, are there any other comments or questions from committee members? All righty, we need a motion on this item.
Motion to approve.
Okay, can I get a second?
Member Moss will second.
Okay, roll call vote, Eric?
Chair Sandoval,
Yes.
Vice Chair Nancy Lyons,
Yes.
Member Becky Shevelin,
Yes.
Member Corey Moss,
Yes.
Member Diana Mahmood,
Yes.
Supervisor Hilda Solis, Member Margaret Clark,
Yes.
Member Maria Morales,
Yes.
Member Scarlett Peralta,
Yes.
Member Ting Habron.
Yes.
Chair Sandoval, the item is passed.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next item, which I believe is item 12, approval of task force, or I should say task order 3 with AECOM for utility coordination and additional pre-construction services for the Montebello Boulevard grade separation project. Eric?
Thank you, Chair. Staff is recommending the committee to authorize the executive director to issue task order number 3, not to exceed $137,295 to AECOM for providing utility coordination services and andreditional pre-construction services for the Montebello grade separation project. Our senior project manager, Andres Morales will provide additional information pertaining to this recommendation. Andres?
Thank you, Eric. So this item, as Eric mentioned, is for task order number 3 with AECOM. At the January 2021 committee meeting, we presented task order 1 revision 5 to the committee for consideration. In that task order revision, there were 3 items that we were attempting to address with the AECOM task order. The first was an extended period of performance to complete the services that they already had under contract. The second was the addition of a utility coordinator to coordinate with the utility companies as they design their relocation work for the project. And the third was to add pre-construction services to perform separate reviews of the documents for UPRR designs separate from the civil roadwork designs that were already being reviewed. At the meeting, the committee requested that staff reconsider the approach to addressing the issues and bring it back for consideration after it was adjusted. So we subsequently divided the items into 2 items. We issued task order 1 revision 5 for a no-cost time extension to AECOM to address item number 1. And then items numbers 2 and 3, we renegotiated with AECOM the cost to see if we could bring them down. We were able to reduce the cost because the agency decided on hiring an in-house position to provide the coordination with the utility companies. We project that we would have that person on board in July of this year. So the proposal was adjusted to reduce the amount of consultant time to 1 day a week or 8 hours a day from July 1st through September 30th. And this one day a week was projected to provide a transition of the project to the new staff. If that time is not needed, it will not be spent or will not be used. So we are requesting that the committee authorize the execution of task order number 3 with AECOM to provide the interim utility coordination services and the additional pre-construction services for the Montebello grade separation project. I would like to note, as far as the fiscal impact, we do have contingency within the project budget that would cover this. So there would be no impact to the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget. With that, I'll hand it back off to Eric.
Thank you, Andres. With that, we'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. Member Mahmood?
Yes, just real briefly, I note that AECOM's proposal and presumably the basis upon which the 137,000 change order is based provides for utility coordinator services through the end of June and then 1 day a week in support thereafter. And it would seem that I would see how maybe for the first month that would be necessary, but I would hope that we would hire someone experienced in providing utility coordination services and that we can terminate AECOM's services after maybe the first month or so. Just a note, I would just ask that you pay attention to that.
Thank you for pointing that out, and we'll definitely closely monitor, as Andre has reported. If it's not necessary, once our new hire is able to go full speed on his own or on her own, we will taper down our reliance on outside consultant for the service.
I'm sorry, I just had one more item of note. The format of this task order is slightly different. It's not as detailed as that provided for some of the prior projects, and I would ask that the format be maintained in a consistent manner, as well as, again, that it identify the amount expended to date. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions from committee members? Okay, can I have a motion on this item?
Chair, I'd like to move the item, Lyons.
Okay,
Ross will
second.
second the item.
Okay, roll call voter.
Chair Thunderball,
Yes.
Vice Chair Nancy Lyon,
Yes.
Member Becky Shevelin,
Yes.
Member Corey Moss,
Yes.
Member Diana Mahmood,
Yes.
Supervisor Hilda Solis, Member Margaret Clark,
Yes.
Member Maria Morales,
Yes.
Member Scarlett Peralta,
Yes.
Member Tim Hepburn.
Yes.
Chair Thunderball, the item is passed.
Great, thank you. All right, we move on to agenda item 13, which is the approval of task order 6, revision 1 for AECOM for design services during construction for the Durfee Avenue grade separation project. I turn it back to you.
Thank you, Chair. This is the last of the 4 action items that we're seeking your approval. Staff is recommending the committee to authorize the executive director to issue task order number 6, revision number 1, not to exceed $199,020 to AECOM for providing additional design support during construction for the Durfee Avenue grade separation project. Our project manager, Renee Coronel, will provide additional information pertaining to this recommendation.
Hello
Renee?
again. So for the Durfee project, which is currently in construction, we just overcame one of the biggest hurdles, which is completing the bridge and having Union Pacific come to lay their tracks. That basically means that they've approved our bridge, the phase 1. But to get there, our designer and our project team had to go through, they had to expend additional hours, mainly in our design team. Typically in construction, our construction management team deals with a lot of the back and forth coordination with UP. There's 3 professional engineers and myself, another professional engineer on staff. So that's 4 professional engineers. The Union Pacific requested that the designer of record have their input in this, in the construction of the bridge. So that wasn't accounted for originally. And just to comply with the Union Pacific, we went ahead and authorized their request. This task order revision takes us to the end of the project, past the end of the project. And to add on top of what Charles added, this project scheduled to be completed in July of 2022. Our contractor only has a certain amount of people on staff, so it is going to take them a bit of time, maybe a month or 2, to get the as-built to our construction management team. After that, they will review it, and lastly, we'll have an input from our designer of record. So that's why it's taking us up to December of that year, which is 6 months past the end of construction. If for this task, if the designer of record doesn't review anything, he won't charge us. So this task order allows the designer of record to have a budget just in case they need to review things as the project goes along. Other than that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Great, thanks, Renee.
Member Mahmood?
Thank you. My question goes to the fiscal impact. It identifies that, I guess in the COG budget, it just says the adopted budget. for capital projects. So I assume that's the COG ACE budget that's referenced. Is that correct?
That is correct. Sorry, go
Okay.
ahead.
So it says that the adopted budget is 1.3 million has been set aside as contingency, but it seems that just today we've approved a lot more than 1.3 million. So in order for this statement to make sense, we would have to have identified for us all of the approvals that have been undertaken by this committee that have eaten into that contingency fund. It doesn't have anything to do with this revised contract amount. It's the amount of all of the other contracts that this committee has approved.
Sorry, that contingency is just for the Durfee project. Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood the question. Yeah.
And Member Mamu, I do apologize. It should have been singular. It should be more specific that 1.3 million contingency is for the Durfee project. We'll make sure going forward, we'll continue to do better job editorially.
Thank you. That would be very helpful.
So with that, are there any additional questions from the committee?
I just had one additional question. So for design support during construction, we awarded a little bit over $1 million, and the amount of this revision to the task order is essentially 20% more than the original amount. Do we really think that the design engineers' work increased by 20%?
We're factoring into account that the Union Pacific will request what we did in the first phase, which will require a lot of effort. Hopefully the Union Pacific, which we're asking for the same team of inspectors to come back, they don't request everything that they requested in the first phase, and therefore we won't need as much of it. But we're taking into account that they will hold us by the book. But they're very happy with the job we've done. They trust us at this point, so hopefully it doesn't get to that point. But if they hold us to the requirements that they want, again, which happened in the first phase, then yes, we will have to expend all this amount.
Thank you. And Eric, this strikes me as another area where it would be very helpful to the extent that we can, if we can nail down Union Pacific's requests in advance so that we're not addressing these concerns on a piecemeal basis. And again, we have a much better idea going in at the commencement of the project exactly what our cost exposure is.
And
Thank you.
Member Mamu, thanks for your comment. I would also like to use this opportunity to conclude our presentation today. I understand it has been a long meeting. As you have noticed that our project, the success of our projects, not only rely on very capable team members, but we also rely on Union Pacific. They are indeed our most important client, but at the same time, we have very little leverage. With more than 30 container ships docked outside of Port of Long Beach in Los Angeles, we recently met with Union Pacific senior staff. We understand their priority right now really is to address the throughput, to do as much as they could. So for us, every single time today you have reviewed 4 projects, 3 projects involve cutover. Every time when Union Pacific accommodate our needs to cut over from the existing operation to our new tracks, it does involve a lot of coordination. So I do want to reassure you that we do have very, very responsive stakeholder partner, that is Union Pacific. But at the same time, we also have to work very, very gingerly because when we really hammer them with one project, very likely that could impact 3 other projects that are also that we desperately need their support. But I want to reassure Member Mahmood, we do our best to coordinate so that we have better handle on the schedules so that we can contain our costs on our consultants. So with that, back to Chair Sandoval.
Thank you. All right, if we,
I'll move approval.
okay, can I get a second?
Member Moss will second.
Okay, roll call vote?
Thank you. Chair Sandoval,
Yes.
Vice Chair Nancy Lyons,
Yes.
Member Becky Shovelin,
Yes.
Member Corey Moss,
Yes.
Member Diana Mahmood,
Yes.
Supervisor Yoda Solis, Member Margaret Clark,
Yes.
Member Maria Morales, Member Scarlett Peralta,
Yes.
Member Tim Hapron.
Yes.
Chair Sandoval, the item is passed.
Thank you, Eric. I don't see any additional items at this time. So we will adjourn to a meeting on Monday, April 26th, unless told otherwise.
Thank you
Okay,
very
everyone,
much.
listen, you guys have a good day, okay? Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day.